Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable our lecturer, Ms. Sinta Amalia MPD, as the lecturer of Sociolinguistics class, and all of my beloved friends. Okay, the presentation today is about gender and age. First of all, I'm going to introduce our group. We are from the second group, and the members are me as the moderator, and there are Anissa, Ekadian, Putri, and Siti. Okay, in this presentation, we will talk about gender and age. So without further ado, let's start it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, in this material will be delivered by Siti. To Siti, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Gender exclusive, speech different. Women and men from the same speech community may use different linguistic forms to speak. The linguistic forms used by women and men generally contrast to the different degrees in all speech communities. Look at Tayana is a young Amazonian Indian woman from the northwest Amazon basin. She lives with her husband and children and a number of other families in a longhouse beside the river. The language of her longhouse is Tuyuka, which is the language she used to talk to her children. She comes from different tribes, and her first language is Desano. She used Desano to her husband, and he replies in Tuyuka. Based on the example, women and men don't speak in the same way in any community. The language used by Tayana as a woman is different from her husband's language. This occurs because the man marries women from outside this tribe, and each tribe is distinguished by different language. Tuyuka is a language used by all the men in this tribe, and she talks to her children with Tuyuka. When she talks to her husband with her first language, he replies with Tuyuka because Tuyuka is the language used by all the men in this tribe. Next slide. There are communities where the language is shared by women and men, but particular linguistic features typically occur only in the women's speech or only in the men's speech. These features are usually small differences in pronunciation or word shape or morphology. For instance, in Bengali, a language of India, the women use an initial L, where the men use an initial N in some words. Word shape in other language contrasts because women and men use different affix. Let's take a look on example below. There are differences between the form for men and women in the Yana language. For deer, women form is ba, but men forms at suffix na, so bana. For word person, women form is ya, meanwhile in men form at suffix na become yana, and for men they add suffix. The particular linguistic features from women and men are different. Word shapes in yana different affix. Based on the example number 2, some of words used between Yana's men are longer than the words used by women, because in Yana language, the men form sometimes add a suffix. The example number 2, the words used by men sometimes add a suffix, but in language, there are also differences between the vocabulary item used by women and men, though these are never very extensive. Next slide. In some languages, there are also differences between the vocabulary items used by women and men, though these are very extensive. Differences between standard Japanese include women from say oto-san, but men from say oyaji. For word eat, women say taberu. For men, they say ku. Uh, there are differences vocabulary items used by men and women in traditional standard of the speaker. Based on the previous example, for example number 1, in Amazonian Indian, Tuyuka as a language that signal a men gender. Inyana gender. Not only that, like traditional standard Japanese, there are differences vocabulary used by women and men. So we can say the linguistic forms used by women and men generally different in the communities. There are differences between women's and men's speech in this communities in like gender exclusive social roles. Okay, I think enough from me. Back to moderator.
Okay, thank you for your brief explanation, Siti. Okay, the next slide. It will be delivered by.
Okay, thank you, moderator. I will explain gender preferential speech features, variation in sociolinguistics. In the English-speaking population in every city where speech data has been collected. For instance, women use more in pronunciation and fewer in pronunciation than men in words, like swimming and typing. In Montreal, the French used by women and men is distinguished by the frequencies which they pronounce L in press such as il, y, a, and il, faith, but women and men delete L, but men do so more often than women. In Sydney, some women and men pronounce the initial sound in thing as F, but the men use this pronunciation more than the women. But the social and the linguistic patterns in this community show gender preferential features rather than gender exclusive. Though both women and men use particular forms, one gender shows a greater preference for one of them than the other. In all these examples, women tend to use more of the standard forms than men, while men use more of the vernacular forms than women. In Australia, interviews with people in Sydney reveal gender differentiate patterns of age dropping. Next is gender and social class. Across all social groups in Western societies, women generally use more standard grammatical forms than men, and so correspondingly, men use more vernacular forms than women. In Detroit, for instance, multiple negation, example, I don't know nothing about it. A vernacular feature of speech is more frequent in men's speech than in women's. This is true in every social group, but the difference is most dramatic in the second highest, the lower middle class, where the men's multiple negation score is 32%, compared to only 1% for women. Even in the lowest social group, however, men use a third more instance of multiple negation than women, 90 versus 59%. The wise birth pattern is also evident from a very young age. It was first identified over 60 years ago in a study of American children's speech in a small New England village, where it was found that the boys used more in and the girls more in form. Later studies in Boston and Detroit identify the same pattern. Boys use more funicular forms such as consonant cluster simplification, example less and tall, rather than standard less and short. Boys pronounce the in the words like the and them as the more often than girls. In Edinburgh, differences of this sort were observed in the pronunciation of girls and boys as young as 6 years old. The pattern is clear, consistent, and widespread, and it is evident from a very early age. Okay, I think that's all from me. Back to moderator.
Okay, thank you so much for your complete explanation, Anissa. Okay, the next slide will be delivered by Putri. To Putri, time and place are yours.
Okay, thank you, moderator. I want to explain about explanation for women's linguistic behavior. Why do women use more standard form than men? The first one, because social class and social status. Second, women's role in society. Third, women's status as a subordinated group. And the last, function of speech in expressing gender identity, especially masculinity. Next. Next slide. Explanation of women's linguistic behavior. The first one is the social status explanation. Women are more aware of the fact that the way they speak signal their social class background or social status in the community. Standard speech forms are generally associated with high social status, and so according to this explanation, women use more standard speech form as a way of claiming such status. Women interviewed in New York and Norwich reported that they use more standard form than they actually did has also been used to support this explanation. Women are typically considered less statusful in society compared to men, and so it is suggested some try to acquire more status by using standard speech form. So, in essence, this explanation proposed that women strategically utilize standard speech form to project a higher social status and counteract societal perception of their lower status. By doing so, they aim to assert themselves and potentially gain more recognition, respect, and opportunities in various social contexts. Next slide. Okay, nice. Next slide is about women's role as a guardian of society's value. Women are used more standard form than men in many Western speech communities, point to way society tends to expect better behavior from women than from men. Women use more standard form than men may be relevant in some social groups. Standard form are typically associated with more formal and less personal interaction, but it is certainly not true for all. interaction between a mother and her child are likely to be very relaxed and informal. And it is relaxed informal context that vernacular form occur most often in everyday speech. So the observation that women tend to use more standard form of language than men in Western speech communities suggests that society expects women to exhibit better behavior. Standard forms are associated with formal and less personal interaction, aligning with the perception of women are nurturing, polite, and proper. However, this trend is not universal and does not apply in relaxed and informal contexts, such as interaction between a mother and her child. In such setting, both women and men are more likely to use vernacular form to foster familiarity and comfort. Therefore, while women's language choices may reflect the societal expectation as a guardians of values, linguistic patterns vary depending on specific context and relationship. So I think that's all. Back to moderator.
Okay, thank you for your great explanation, Putri. Okay, guys, we move to another slide. Okay, in this slide, it will be referred by B. Okay, we will talk about subordinate groups must be polite. So women's use of more standard forms instead of people who are subordinate must be polite. Women as a subordinate group, it is urged must avoid offending men, so they must speak carefully and politely. uh, has been urged that people in subordinate positions, including women, may feel the need to be polite in their language use. This is often attributed to the desire to avoid offending those in positions of power to societal expectation. Politeness can be a strategic way to navigate power dynamics and maintain social harmony. By using standard forms, a woman is protecting her face, or a technical term used by sociolinguistics with approximately the same meaning as in the first to allow space. Example C is also avoiding offense to others. So that's why women are sometimes observed to use more standard behavior is seen as a way to protect their avoiding actions or speech that could result in loss of respect by adhering to standard language norms. Women aim to avoid offending others and maintain positive and social relationship. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here is the vernacular forms express massimo. Vernacular forms of language are often associated with masculinity and expressions of strong masculine pride. Known like on our PowerPoint, in pride and vernacular forms carry macho connotations of masculinity and toughness. So the standard form tend to be associated with female values and feminine and What is a standard pronouns and femininity? It means standard language forms are sometimes associated with feminine values and femininity. However, it is important to note that the association between standard language and femininity can vary across different cultures and commune, gender, and social norms is complex and should not be reduced to simplistic uh, different way of talking. That's why Massimo deals with a macho side of men. Okay, I think that's all from me. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide will be delivered by Eka. To
Okay, thank you, Madam. Features of speech. One of the most obvious speech differences between women and men is in the pitch of their voice. Most people believe this difference developed at puberty. Their voice quality reflects their physical growth. Boys' vocal cords generally grow faster and bigger than girls at puberty. Not only pitch, but vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar can differentiate age groups. Slang is another area of vocabulary which reflects a person's age. And you can see the example in here in New Zealand. So age plays a role as a factor that influences people linguistic choice. By analyzing children, teenagers, and adult speech, sociolinguistics agree that speech has age-weighted features. First is speech. It is difficult to determine the gender of a 5 years old of child taking on the phone. When boys and girls hit puberty, they develop different pitch. Men are lower in pitch, women are higher in pitch. The next one is vocabulary. Swear words or cursing words. Teenagers tend to use more swear words than children or adults. Men restrict swearing to all male settings, whereas women reduce their swearing in all settings. The next is pronunciation. In pronunciation, different pronunciation can be a real giveaway in guessing a person's age. Next slide, please. Age and social dialect data. Children gradually acquire standard forms in the same way as they gradually acquire new vocabulary and control of grammatical construction. It is likely that this process reflects an expansion of the child's stylistic range. In other words, the child gradually acquires standard forms alongside vernacular forms. The data probably also reflects the fact that once acquired, that standard forms are likely to be used more often in an interview with a social linguist. Many social dialectologists have found that adolescents use particularly high frequency of vernacular forms, especially if they are forms such as aimed at multiple negotiation, which people clearly recognize and identify as non-standard. Social dialect data, on the other hand, focuses on the variation in language use associated with social factors such as socioeconomic status, education level, ethnicity, and geographic location. Sociolinguists examine how language varies across different social groups and how this variation reflects social identity and community membership. They may analyze linguistic features such as pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammatical patterns that are associated with specific social groups and communities. Age-related data involves examining how language use changes across different age groups. So, by analyzing language samples from individuals of different age, researchers can identify language features that are characteristics of specific age group. Next slide, please. Age grading and language change. Linguistic features of an individual will change as he or he grows up. older. Dialect, slang, jargon, and pronunciation it will be changed. Linguistic features of the younger people and comparing it with the older people. For vernacular terms, younger people in New Zealand say letter for letter. Younger people will use less of the forms that is being used by the older people. Age grading refers to a change of behavior with age that repeats itself in each generation, like vocabulary and slang. Different generation may use distinct vocabulary and slang. Younger speakers often develop and adopt new words and expressions, reflecting cultural shift and technological advancement. Older speakers, on the other hand, may use more traditional vocabulary and expression that were prevalent during their years. Okay, I think that's all about explanation. Back to the moderator.
Okay, thank you for your great explanation, Eka. Okay, I think that's all from us for the presentation. Um, we hope that our presentation will be useful for all of us. And I'm as a moderator would like to say very sorry if we have made mistakes. And last, we say thank you so much for watching our video, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.